and taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Risotto is one of the things that I feel absolutely comfortable teaching people how to cook because it's one of my favorite foods. We probably make it at least once a week, and we make all different kinds of risotto. Oh, and let me just ask everybody to mute themselves unless they need to talk, just so we have less. But feel free to, if you have a question, just break right in. So I'm just going to be clear why I feel risotto is such a special dish in just a couple of minutes, because I'm going to tell you about it. And one of the things that I will mention to you is that I can remember very clearly most of the places that I've had in stellar risotti over the last 30 years. So I remember the very first time I ever had risotto, I was so blown away. It was at a restaurant in Manhattan called Da Umberto. And it was in the spring, and they had a fresh pea risotto, and I had never experienced anything like it. And it was bright green. It was just gorgeous, and it just had so much flavor. I went crazy over it. And Rachel said, I said, who taught us how to make risotto? And she said, you came home from New York one time and just started, trying to figure out how to make risotto because you had such an amazing experience. And then I remember another one that I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but I remember another one. This is a menu from 1997 at a classic New York restaurant called San Domenico. It's no longer there. It was on Central Park South. It was a very famous restaurant. And the chef at the time, Odette Fado, was having a risotto festival. And the risotto that I had there that night was pears. I had several, but the one that stood out, which was so incredible, was pears and gorgonzola cheese. It was just like rocked my world. I mean, it was just, you couldn't eat you could eat like 3 or 4 bites of it. That's about it, because it was so incredibly rich, but just absolutely amazing. And it's probably where I became much more familiar with the different kinds of rice that can be used, because there's a whole culture of rice that goes into. On this particular night, they were using 1, 2, 3, 4 different kinds of rice in the different risotti that they were making. And that restaurant was owned by a gentleman by the name of Tony May. This is an Italian cookbook that you probably have never seen, I would imagine. It's called Italian Cuisine, Basic Cooking Techniques, and it's by Tony May. And as I mentioned, he was, for many, many years, was a standout restaurateur in New York City. And so this is a really cool little book. I don't even know if it's available still or not, but in there he gives all these different techniques. And so these are, his little techniques about cooking risotto and the different types of rice that are involved. And so it's a really interesting, I'd say, culture of cooking. If you, and I'll probably send some of these articles along, but if you look into it a lot, you have, some people like Kenji Lopez Alt, who wrote The Food Lab, who's very much into the science of cooking. And he basically has said very clearly, there's no reason to do what I'm going to show you tonight. It's way too much work. It doesn't make a difference in terms of how it tastes or anything like that. Here's a simpler way to do it. Well, go ahead, follow Kenji if you like, but he missed the point. and I'm sure he didn't really miss it. He was just trying to make it more available to people. But we'll talk about that point very shortly. And there are other ways. When we were in Verona, we learned a way to make it where you just throw everything in the pot, cover it with the broth, and put a lid on it and show up again in 20 minutes. and the person who taught us that told us it was called risotto veronese. I don't have any idea if that's true or not, but it doesn't yield the same type of result either. And it's not intended to, because it's a different methodology. The reason that I love cooking risotto, and interestingly enough, I read about some other author mentioned this in an article, is that it's like being, it's your own version of a cooking meditation. You have to be with it. That's the whole purpose behind the methodology. You have to stay with it. You have to nurture it for 20, 25 minutes. And so what happens is that dish becomes a real reflection of you and what you're putting into it. And then when you serve it to other people, all of that comes through. And it's just like people's faces just light up because that dish is so full of the love that you put into it as you babied it along for 25 minutes and we're watching it and stirring it and just spent so much time hanging out with it. So that's why this process is so important, I think, because it's something that most people don't do very much these days in terms of cooking. It's all about quickness and, you know, what can you do and get in and out as fast as possible. But I just want to suggest that if you want to experience the joy, one of the joys of cooking, it's with the process of cooking risotto, because it's, as you'll see tonight, I think, that it's just really a pleasure to do. And so one thing I would recommend is please make sure you have the time to cook it so that you don't try to rush the process, because it's a process that doesn't want to be rushed. It wants to just be savored the whole time. So we're going to use, everybody's got all their stuff, and there are different ideas in terms of what kind of pot is the best kind of pot to, you know, cook it in. I think I gave you a couple of thoughts when I sent the instructions out. You want it to be heavy bottomed, whatever it is. It can be wide, it could be a little bit more narrow. I like deeper. That's just the way I like to do it. And the broth needs to be hot. Now there's another thing that Kenji, I remember him say, oh, it doesn't have to be hot. Well, okay, maybe it doesn't. I mean, he obviously is a lot smarter than I am, and he does a lot more research than I do. But the point is that that's how it's generally made. I'll put it to you that way. And the reason that's usually given is that when you add the hot broth to the rice, the dish is it's staying more at a constant temperature. So it's not, you know, having to get back up to temperature again after you add the liquid all the time. So your liquid, your broth should be, it doesn't have to be boiling, certainly shouldn't be boiling. It could be at a low simmer, or it could be just below a simmer, but it should just be nice and warm. And you should keep the pot of broth right near the burner, right next to basically where you're going to be making the risotto. For stirring the risotto dish, I suggest a wooden implement. This has been with us for, I don't know how many years. I love it. Just a simple Joyce Chen wooden spoon, but I use it every single day. And so does anybody have any questions before we get ready to start?
Did you send us the recipe?
Send you the recipe. You're going to get it right here.
Oh, okay. I thought you said that you sent it already. Okay.
Oh, I sent a lot of the prep.
You did? Okay. I guess I didn't see that. Okay.
Yes, I did. I didn't send the actual particulars of cooking.
But the prep. Okay.
But all the prep work, right, exactly. So one of the issues with a home cook is that a lot of home cooks don't use recipes. So it's like just try to.
Hey, Stephen, I have a question for you. What are we supposed to do with the sage?
The sage, you need to chop it.
Okay.
Which, not the sage leaves, the whole sage leaves.
Oh, no. I have my sage leaves. They're cooking there. Can you see them?
Okay, great.
But I have my other sage.
Yes, chop the sage leaves. We're going to add that near the end, and that's going to it's really going to perk up the flavor. Is anybody using wine or not?
Oh, I am.
Okay, you are. Okay, so if you have wine, then I'll tell you exactly when to use it. I don't have any wine, so I'm not using it. But hi, Jody. So I made a couple suggestions today. I don't know what people have, but if you do have wine, if you have a Pinot Grigio or a Viognier, I always like to keep the cultures straight, so I'd say Pinot Grigio, but Viognier would work perfectly also. So and it'll be used to add another flavor layer to what we're doing. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to, well, let me just give you a couple of terms. You can put your, the pot you're going to cook your risotto in, you can turn it on about medium. So it gets up, and put whatever you're going to use. If you're going to use butter, if you're going to use olive oil, obviously if you're doing it vegan, then you're going to use olive oil. So you can use butter, you can use olive oil, you could use a combination of some butter and some olive oil, or you can use clarified butter, which is what I just love to use clarified butter. So that's what's melting in here right now. So I thought what would be kind of fun, and there's not going to be a test at the end, so you don't have to worry about it, is that I could teach you some Italian terms, cooking terms at the same time. Might be kind of fun. So rice in Italian is riso, R-I-S-O. And risotto is simply cooked rice. So it's really very simple. A lot of times you'll hear people talking about those, they get the terms a little bit mixed up because the rice before it's cooked is riso. And I have my grandkids are watching and they speak Italian, so they'll correct me when I do something wrong, so it'll be okay. Right, Ariella? Good, okay, great. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is you're going to, heat everything. Oh, and the rice, don't wash the rice. Do not wash the rice. Really important. How many people are using carnaroli? Just let me see your hands.
Not me.
How many people are using arborio? Okay. Okay, so either one of those is great. Vialone Nano is another great rice to use. Vialone Nano is a rice that's used a lot on the eastern side of northern Italy, especially in Venice. They like that, but they also love carnaroli. And Rachel and I have had the great pleasure of visiting a couple of places that grow these varieties of rice in northern Italy, and quite extraordinary. And one of the places was actually also a mill that had been in operation since the 1500s. So it was quite extraordinary. I mean, to see all these essentially mortars and pestles that were mechanized with all these little cables and stuff like that. And the racket was so loud. It was quite amazing to experience that. So is everybody ready? Is your pot up to temperature and ready to start the cooking process? Let me know if you're not ready.
I'm not ready yet, sorry.
Okay, so we'll wait. So we want everybody to be at the same place, because if we're all in the same place, we should all be exactly ready. We should be ready to eat at the same time too. So.
Stephen, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
The second type of rice that you mentioned, is there a major store, chain store that you buy that at, or I've not seen it?
Are you talking about the carnaroli?
Yes.
You probably have to find it at a specialty food store for the most part, or an Italian food store, or of course online.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to
And the reason that I love carnaroli is because carnaroli is a little bit more forgiving in terms of it's harder to overcook, so that's really nice. It's also a little bit more interesting when it comes time for seconds, because again, it has a little bit more integrity to it. And then it's even better when it's time for leftovers. And remind me if I forget to tell you what to do with your leftovers, because it's a fun thing to be able to use the leftovers. All right, so everybody ready? Christy, are you ready?
My pan's not quite hot enough, but just one more minute, I'm sorry.
Okay. Any other questions right now?
Steve, I have a question.
Yes.
So in terms of, I don't know, I didn't know that there were different kinds of risotto rice, and I just know that with everybody's, it says risotto rice. So,
yeah, it's probably arborio.
Yeah. So now, what are your feelings about arborio?
Arborio is probably the most common rice used for risotto. The reason that I don't like to use it is just because it breaks down faster. So you have to be a little bit more deft in terms of your cooking technique. And I find that it's not as enjoyable for seconds or for leftovers as carnaroli. That's all. I mean, it's probably, as I said, the most used variety for risotto.
Okay.
Steve,
Yes.
When you said you're heating your pot, you're heating your pot without anything in it?
No, it's got the clarified butter.
Oh, it's got the butter in it. Okay.
Right. So everybody ready now?
Yes.
All right. So don't do what I did. I mixed all the items that I told you to, I think I said keep separately, the celery, the red onion, and the carrot. I mixed it all up. So what we want to do is we really want to cook the hardest vegetable first, give it a little bit of head start. So that would be the carrot, right? Or you could do the onion. But the main thing that we want to remember here is we're not trying to brown anything, right? So for the onion, to kind of look at when this is going to be done, ready to go, it's the onion gets it to be a little bit, it has that nice sheen on it, and it looks a little bit softer, right? But we don't want browning. We're not looking for browning right now, all right? So I'm just going to dump all this in here because it'll be fine. It's not going to be any big deal. And what we're doing right now is, this is called sofrito. So there's your next Italian term. Sofrito is basically a mixture of vegetables and seasonings that, that's it. As my daughter pointed out to me earlier, it's a noun. So sofrito is generally onion.
Base.
Yes, it's a base, exactly. It's a flavor base. So it's onion, celery, and carrot, and garlic is another thing. So I'm putting it in right now and stirring it up, right? And we're gonna start cooking. Your heat's on medium. And it'll immediately start to smell, which is lovely. And then we're gonna just give it a little bit of salt, all right? So I hope everybody's got some sea salt. I would like to just mention that salt is a really critical element in all kinds of cooking, everyday cooking. And salt is something that, if you're serious about cooking, spend time looking into it, because salt is not salt, just salt. Matter of fact, I've had sea salts too, that you should taste your salt when you buy it too. Because I've had sea salts that just taste horrible. I mean, they're just so processed. And what you really want to try to find are sea salts that have a great story behind them. Maybe it's salt from Sicily that's made in Trapani, or maybe it's, salt from Oregon made by a company called Jacobson's, or maybe it's some person who has their own little place in France where they, actually go every day and process salt in Brittany. But salts are quite extraordinary, and they are totally different. These types of salts are totally different than that umbrella package, right? The girl with the umbrella. That is an iodized salt with, generally has other additives put into it to keep it from caking. And it doesn't have any of the nutritional value of a sea salt or a rock salt. So I would just suggest that you spend a little bit of time looking into salts. And if we want to talk about that, if somebody feels like that would be a topic for a future show, then I'll make sure to get somebody on who's an expert and we can discuss it. If you ever saw the Samin Nasrat special 4-part series on Netflix, one of the things that she does when she's in Japan, she goes into a store in Japan where the guy has 4,000 salts that he sells.
What show is that?
Samin Nasrat, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. It's on Netflix. Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. She's amazing. She's an extraordinary cook and an extraordinary educator.
So Stephen, I did what you suggested, and I separated the carrots, the celery, the onion.
Okay. So get your onions started, and when they start to look like they're getting a little bit softer, add the carrot, and the celery will be last. And then if you have garlic, which I do, that's going to be very last, because you do not want to be browning your garlic or getting it too cooked. And then what we're going to do is, and this is something you're going to have to think through a little bit. we're going to, some of us are going to take out some of this sofrito. We're not going to leave it all in the pot because we don't want it to impede the cooking of the rice. So we certainly want some in there because we want it to create that flavor base. We're infusing whatever oil we use with the flavors of these ingredients. And then we're going to put the rice in and we're going to move to the next step, which is tostatura. Tostatura, which essentially is just, toasting. We're going to toast this rice before we actually start to proceed with the cooking process. That's the first part of cooking the rice. So how's everybody's looking? Looking pretty good?
Smells good.
Yeah, it smells really good. So when we salt, so there's several things to know here. One, we want to make sure the broth has enough salt, right? You don't want it to be too salty because it's cooking and it's evaporating, so it's concentrating even more. So you don't want it to be too salty, but you want it to have some salt in it so that it's infusing the rice as it goes into the dish. You want the sofrito to also have salt in it. And then somewhere in the middle of the cooking process, we're going to taste and we're going to add salt if we need to. And at the end, so salt, 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 at least three different times, because you can't add salt at the end of this process and have it taste the same because it's not going to penetrate into the rice at that point. So you want to make sure that you're infusing everything as you go. And believe me, I have made many risotti over the years where I haven't done that properly, and I have heard about it. My wife is laughing in the background right now, so because she's the first one to say, "Oh, you didn't salt this properly." So, or your children, or my children, yeah, might do the same thing. Yes.
When we remove the most of the celery and carrots and onion from the pan, are we just supposed to put it in another pot or in a bowl, or what do you do?
Just put it in a little bowl, and you don't need to remove all of it. It's just if you've got a big pan, that's absolutely fine. It's just I don't want it to be where you're crowding your rice too much. Because we're not gonna. For example, the butternut squash isn't going in. We roasted it, right? It's going in at the very end. We're not doing anything with it until that point. So, because we want that rice to be able to have we want it to have the opportunity to cook and enjoy its bath in the broth. So is everybody almost ready? I think I'm about a minute or two before I'm ready to move to the next step. And I don't want anybody to be lost. I want us to stay together here. But you can see what I'm talking about already about how you have to give attention to this dish. It's a dish that just asks for your attention. And it's so you see how pretty those colors are? The red of the onion, the green of the celery. I was really lucky. I had a lot of celery tops. And that's where a lot of the flavor is. So it's great. And the orange of the carrot. And I want to take a picture of that because it's so pretty. Thank you. It's really pretty.
I'm hungry.
Oh, Rachel says she's hungry. That's difficult. We talked about that already, right? You got to have time.
Well, hurry up.
It takes time here. You can't rush it. Everybody about ready though?
I am.
Just add it to garlic.
I'm gonna remove some of my stuff right now. And actually, I am going to cook this one more minute. I'm going to cook mine one more minute. So I'm just going to go over the terms. This process right now is called sofrito. Those are the 3 or 4 elements that you are using as a flavor base. And rice is your main ingredient, riso. And you're going to cook the rice so then it becomes risotto at that point. It's not risotto yet. It's riso at the moment, along with all these other elements. I just have to tell you about a couple of other experiences that we had with risotto. One was we were out with these friends of ours who made these fantastic products in Piemonte, and they took us to this agriturismo one night up in the mountains of Piemonte. And I have no idea where we were, but I can just tell you, and I'm sure Rachel feels the same way, the risotto we had that night was from another universe. It was just quite extraordinary. And it was just so lovely, rich, and the cheese I'm sure was a mountain cheese, you know, from it was okay, yes, so it was a mountain cheese from there. It was just crazy good. And one time we had a risotto in Emilia Romagna. I did at the house of our friends, the Barbieris, who make Acetaia del Cristo, who make traditional balsamic vinegar. And of course, when they served risotto, they served it and put some traditional balsamic vinegar over the top of it at the end. So it's very funny, very unique way to do it. So I'm gonna take out my stuff now, and I'm gonna show you the spoon. This is one of my absolute favorite kitchen tools. Many chefs use this because it's so useful. It's a very oversized spoon, and you can get it at JB Prince, so jbboyprince.com. It's called the Gray Kunz, Kunz spoon. Gray Kunz was a chef who had numerous restaurants. I was lucky enough to eat at some of his restaurants and meet him. And he developed this spoon. He used to give it to all of his, you know, prep cooks and everything as something that they got when they came to work in his restaurants. And so I did take a little bit out of I took a little bit out of the sofrito out. And anyway, this spoon is a great tool, and it makes great gifts, by the way. So now you're gonna add your rice. Everybody's with me, right?
Yep.
Okay, you're gonna add your rice. And we're gonna do what? Anybody remember? What's the process called?
Toast it.
Huh?
Toast it.
Tostatura, right. We're gonna toast it, exactly. And so what you're trying to do, or what you're doing is you're covering the rice. You wanna stir, you see what I'm doing? You're covering the rice with the oil or butter or whatever it is that's in your pot, because you're trying to dry it out a little bit and also to start the toasting process. So this is another important part of the whole risotto cooking.
We just mix it with the veggies that are in there?
Yes, whatever's in there, you're mixing it together, and you're just gonna let it toast, but it's not gonna brown. It's not gonna stick. You never want any of your rice to stick when you're making risotto, okay? So if you leave it too long and you come back and it's sticking, just, you know, you'll add liquid, and you can just use your spoon to scrape the bottom and free it up. But right now we're just toasting. So we want to, you know, move it around, let it sit for a little bit, move it around, kind of get it all covered. And now here's something eclectic. I've never been able to reach this point yet in my cooking risotto career, but they say that you can actually hear it when it's done toasting. I'm gonna continue working to get to that place, but I haven't got there yet. So I'm looking to see when it becomes, what'd you say?
What is it supposed to sound like? It stops
You know,
me?
I'm not sure.
Like,
but
important part. You need to
I
figure
know.
that out.
I know. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm gonna have to find a chef who actually listens to the rice and ask them for some clues. Meanwhile, what I'm doing is I'm looking for that rice to become more opaque. All right. So that's what I'm kind of doing. I'm just looking for it to become more opaque. So just kind of watch it, and you'll see it change a little bit.
When you say more opaque, do you mean all the way opaque, or?
Yeah, more. Just you'll see it just get, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but more opaque. You'll see the way it changes. You know, look, because it's glistening. It's got that oil on it. And it's, you know, this is like 3 or 4 minutes. It's not like some kind of long process, but you just want to make sure that you get it nice and toasted. It's just going to help add more to the whole process. What's happening here is that you're starting to, you know, break up the starches on the outside of the rice and in the kernel of the rice. And it's those starches that eventually end up binding with the oil that you use at the end, Parmigiano, to create this creaminess. You know, sometimes you'll see recipes where they add like cream to risotto. That's like weird. I mean, it's like, first of all, why does it need to be any richer? and in addition to that, it's like, didn't you do it right to begin with so that it was creamy enough? So I've, that's just not part of the process the way I've learned to do it anyway. Let's put it that way. But another thing I will say is there's no right or wrong way. There are many, many different styles. So find one that's comfortable for you and what you like to do. That's the main thing. So I want to remind you that your broth needs to be hot right now. And hopefully you have your ladle, right? And because soon what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a ladle full at a time. It just depends how, what kind of pan you're cooking your risotto in. So I can't say that you'll need 1 ladleful or 2 ladlefuls. You're going to have to judge all that. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to cover that rice with the broth. And then the idea is that you'll cook until most of that broth is cooked out and then cover it again. So it's a ongoing process of adding broth, cooking it out, adding broth, cooking it out. And by the way, for example, in Puglia, they make pasta that way too, where they make pasta dishes where they actually cook it in the same style, where they put all the pasta in and they cover it with broth and cook it out and add more broth and cook it out. So everybody ready to start adding broth? Everybody feel like their rice is toasted? Any questions?
If I were to add the wine, should I do that before the broth?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, right now then, if you want to add the wine, you're going to do that before the broth, and that is going to steam. It should be hot enough that it'll go like that when you add it, right? And you're going to stir and cook it out most of the way. So that's what you want to do. So anybody who wants to add wine, do it right now.
How much wine?
I hear it. That's good.
How much should it be?
How what?
How much wine?
How much do you want? No, I'd say it depends on how big your vessel is again, but a half cup, a cup, something that is going to give you some liquid to actually cook the rice in.
Still toasting the rice at the moment.
Still toasting?
Oh, yeah,
me
I'm
too.
a little behind.
That's all right. You're okay. I'm still toasting too.
I'm taking my squash out of the oven.
Okay, that's good. So for those of us who haven't added wine, or if we've added wine, we're just going to wait another minute or so. And then we'll start to add, as I said, we'll start to add the broth 1 ladle at a time. So then you can do it until you see that you've covered the rice. Okay. And then what you want to do is you're going to want to maintain a stirring process. Now, do you have to continue to stir all the time? Depends on who you ask. Some people say, oh yes, you always have to keep stirring. I don't. I'll stir for a minute or so and then I'll stop and then I'll wait for a minute or two and then I'll start again, but I'm always tending to it. So I'm not walking away. I'm always tending to it, which is why you want to make sure you have everything within your reach. So are we ready to, how's that wine? Is it cooked out?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's start to add the broth, a ladleful at a time. So for me, I'm adding 2.5 ladles, basically, in my pot. Obviously, it depends how big your ladle is too, right? And then you're going to make sure that all your rice is covered. And you're going to stir it around. And like I said, I like to just leave it for a little bit. And then I'll start stirring it again. And it should be boiling, right? Not a light boil. Not like crazy, but light to medium, I'd say. I don't know if you can see this. But it's not going to boil after I take it off of here. Anyway, it's got a nice boil to it, a nice little light boil to it. Very, very nice. So, like I said, just stay with it, stir it, enjoy the process. And this is going to be going on now for arborio, maybe 20 minutes, carnaroli, maybe a little bit longer. What we're going to be looking for is just the same type of texture that you look for in pasta. So you're looking for that rice at the end of the process to be al dente, not al dente, which some people might say. He was a poet, right? But al dente, which means to the tooth, which basically means when you bite into it, there's some substance still there, right? Not hard substance, but some substance to it. So we're not looking for California rice, but we're looking for rice that has some integrity still with it. Should look really pretty right now.
Can you see mine?
I need to put on my glasses. Who said that, by the way?
I did, Christy.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh. Nice. Does it have a broth in it?
Yeah?
Doesn't look like it.
No, you need to add more broth.
Okay.
Okay, so what you want to do is you want, like right now, my rice is covered still. Barely. It's been cooking down now, but it's still covered. And you can look for several different things. One, when is it time to add broth? In other words, when is it time? So you can take your spoon and you can move the rice in a couple different places. And if you see the bottom of the pot, then it's time to add more broth. I don't see the bottom of my pot. I just see liquid. So I'm not adding anything. The other thing, you can look for funnels. You know how sometimes that happens when you're cooking, you see funnels going on. And you can look for those funnels. And then again, when you move things around a little bit, you should notice that the liquid is evaporated to the extent, or been absorbed to the extent that it's time to add more. And that's basically, that is the whole, almost the entire process. Just going to keep doing that over and over again for the next 18 to 22 minutes until we're all ready to move to the next step. So right now I can start to see the top of my rice. Anybody have any questions about how it's going? Going all right? Everybody,
Yep.
everybody, yeah?
I think
okay,
so.
Good. Good.
I'm watching it. Steve Boss in Fairfield's doing a cooking class. I'm watching.
Who said that?
Who said that? Someone's not on mute.
Boss.
Who said that? Come on, fess up. Who said that? Who said Steve Boss in Fairfield is doing a cooking class? Nobody's going to admit to it. Okay.
Yes,
that's fine.
it's me. It's Deb Johnson. I'm in Arizona watching you.
Oh, hi.
Ah,
Hi.
Great. That's awesome. Okay. Hey, matter of fact, Rachel, would you write down who's on this thing? Because I don't even know. I want to make sure I send more information to you guys afterwards. And I won't know who was here and who wasn't here. All right. So has anybody not, see, I can start to add broth now. And has anybody not reached that point yet?
I haven't.
Okay. Well, yes, you did. You reached it a long time ago.
Yeah.
You had to add more broth. Right. So
Hey, Steve,
now this time,
did you make that broth?
I did. I made that broth, and I want to tell you, Randy, it is really good.
What is it?
Oh, there's the trick question. So this broth was, and this is how I make a lot of my broths. So it was kale stems and carrots and the outside of onions, a couple of onions, and maybe the outside of a leek, and the skin of the butternut squash, the two ends of the butternut squash, all the seeds of the butternut squash, and the strings of the butternut squash, and a bay leaf or two, celery, and secret weapon. If you feel like you need a little bit of punch, like you taste and it's just like, still need a little bit of punch. You could use some wine in there, by the way, too. A little bit of better than bouillon. My daughter gave me that suggestion. And so better than bouillon is a really good product. But I really don't like to use pre-made broth, but I will cheat a little bit if necessary and add a little bit. So there's a teaspoonful of better than bouillon in here, and it really is a nice broth. So,
No.
and you get to use lots of stuff that you normally, I mean, a lot of people just throw away, carrot tops, whatever.
No
Right.
garlic?
Yeah, there's garlic and the skins of garlic.
Oh, you do put the skins in. I wasn't sure
Oh,
about
yeah.
using the skins.
Why not? Get any flavor you can out of stuff. Yeah,
Do
definitely.
you use the
put
onion
skin in.
skins too?
Yeah, I use the onion skins too. Yeah, absolutely. So I needed to adjust my heat. I didn't have it up high enough. It needs to, it needs to be working. You need to see it working. Really, really important. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay, excellent.
I have a
Yes.
question about your stock.
Yes.
So it sounds like you're using all the parts of veggies, et cetera, that you're not using for, just in other ways for food. You're using like the tops and the bottoms, the skins where you're not going to eat the skin in a
Right.
meal. So
Right.
is that correct? Basically, for the celery, you're using, are using just the stalk? I mean, the top are using.
So the celery and carrot, I put it all in.
Mhm.
Put the,
And do you
the whole-
cut it up in pieces, or you just put everything in
Yes.
whole?
Yes, I chop it up in not small pieces or anything, larger pieces. I mean, you want enough surface, the more surface that you expose, the more flavor you're probably going to get out of your broth. And you want to cook it for about 50 minutes to an hour on a slow simmer. And then you want to strain it afterwards. Oh, and there's salt in there, of course. And I always put in, I don't know, 8, 10 peppercorns, whole peppercorns in there. And of course, the broth can be adjusted based on what you're trying to, what you're going to cook with the item, what kind of risotto are you going to make? And because that will really determine what kind of broth you want. Because if you've got something very delicate that you're cooking, you can't have that broth so forward that it's going to interfere with the flavor. If you're making a seafood risotto, you want to have a seafood broth, right? So you want to use all the shells and the, just all the stuff that you wouldn't be cooking, you wouldn't be eating to make your broth. And so if you're doing something with, a meat, you might make a chicken stock. Again, you want to just temper it so that it blends in with what you're actually cooking, what the major element is, and not overwhelms it. So we're making butternut squash risotto. Butternut squash is nice, it's sweet, it's got a nice nutty flavor to it. We're putting fresh sage in, which has a very distinctive flavor to it. We really want to make sure that the broth is good, flavorful, but not anything that's going to overwhelm the flavors of the dish itself. And usually with a vegetable broth, it's not, unless you could use too many sweet things and the broth would be too sweet, could be too sweet then, for example, if you used lots of onion and lots of carrot and that could make it too sweet. If you used a lot of cruciferous stuff, like lots of kale and, cabbage leaves or whatever, that could make it way too cabbagey. You don't really want that unless it's something that you're making that is going to blend with that nicely. So this is what I would just call this is a nice stock. If I wasn't feeling well and I needed to just have some hot soup, just a broth, this broth tastes so good that you could just drink it. That's what you want. You want it to be so delicious. Just like the rule with wine, if you wouldn't drink it, you're not going to cook with it. So that's really important.
Did you put sage in this broth or no?
I did not. You
Okay.
could. You could, but I didn't. And if you use dried sage, which I didn't do and I wouldn't do, but if you did, because that's all you could get, you have to be really careful because it's much stronger than fresh sage. So you have to be really careful with that. Probably a third of the amount, something like that, a quarter to a third of the amount. Yes.
And one last question about the broth. I don't know if it's on your, if you mentioned it in the recipe, but how much of each, and if it's on there, you don't have to say it now, how much of like all these items that you used for your broth, like how many carrots, how many onions, how many?
Yes, it is not like that. It does list, carrots, onion, celery. It's kind of like, for me, I do my broth based on what I have available. So I'm trying to use up things. Something comes in the CSA box, it's got lots of carrot tops or whatever and other things. So I'm trying not to, I'm trying to use what I can of it. And so I'll make some broth to use that way. And the only rule I'm trying to keep in mind is I don't want to make it, since I'm generally going to, be making a vegetarian risotto. Not generally, I will be making a vegetarian risotto. I don't want the broth to be, too much in one direction of sweet or cabbagey or anything like that. I'm just kind of more of a neutral broth with lots of nice flavors. And the other thing that you can do too is to use other fresh herbs in it, which are really nice. And really, especially if you're making a vegan version, you're going to use a lot of fresh herbs to jazz it up and make it really very flavorful. So again, I'm reminding you, because I noticed that my rice was sticking in one or two places. So just keep it from sticking. Spend time stirring it. Getting that action, you can start to see some creaminess developing, right?
Yep.
Yep. And we're off and running. We're there. So let me just, mention a couple of other things. So if you like what somebody cooks and you want to say something to them, like, this is really good. You want to say, they say, well, how is the food? You can say, buono. Okay, buono. And if it was really good, molto buono. All right, so that's what you say. A lot of people make mistakes. They in the sense that they use the word bene, but that's not that's not correct. So it's buono is good and molto buono is very good.
Molto buono.
Who said that?
Jody.
Jody, excellent. And girls, did I say that okay? I don't know where they are. Oh, there they are. Did I say that okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Those girls.
Hey, Steve, tell Rachel to pop her head in there. I want to see her.
I don't know where she is. She probably heard you, so hopefully.
And she ran?
Rach, you have been requested to pop your head in, so hopefully she will. Oh, she's coming. Okay, that was Jody, I think, who requested that.
Yep.
So one of the great things about being in Italy 3 years ago with these little grand girls was that because they speak Italian and Rachel and I pretend to speak Italian, and there's a lot of pretend in there. But when we had them with us, it was like open access to anything. It was like whenever they opened their mouths, everybody was fawning all over them, and they couldn't understand what in the world, why are you, they would ask Ariel all the time, oh, is your mother Italian? No. Is your father Italian? No. Well, who taught you it? Yeah, it was so funny. Hilarious. And also, but you have to be a little careful because I remember in this one chocolate shop in Torino, because the proprietor of the shop, she was there she is. There she is, Jen.
Hi.
Everybody's waiting.
Nice
There's
to see
Rachel.
Nice to see you also. There are a lot of people on here.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing, right?
Oh, thanks so much. And so.
Hi, sweethearts. Oh, look, there my.
Rachel, your hair's so long.
It's COVID hair.
Ew, gross.
So long.
It's like when I met you,
Really? It was that long?
longer.
Whoa.
This is Jane.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You remember me from when it was all the way down my back.
I do.
Wow.
And it's just as blonde.
Yes, exactly.
So anyway, like I just wanted to mention it was there. You have to be a little bit careful because when the kids start to talk and interact with the proprietor of the store, and then the proprietor says, "Well, what would you like your no to buy you?" You know, and then they pick out the most expensive, you know, package in the store. It's like you don't really have much choice at that point. So
That did happen.
and that did happen at that chocolate shop. It was pretty funny actually, but it was so good. So good. In Torino, their specialty is gianduia, right, which is chocolate hazelnut, and just absolutely incredible stuff. All right, how's everybody doing? How's their rice looking? Do you see it swelling?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just noticed it's huge. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't think I
it's
put that
swelling.
much in there.
Yeah, so the rice varieties that you use are super fine or fine. What is the way they're classified. And as I said to you, you know, the three most common rices are Violone Nano, Carnaroli, and Arborio to use for risotto. But you can use all kinds. One place we used Riso Baldo, I remember. So there's lots of different varieties that can be used. So I'd say that at this point, I'm going to taste this because I want to know where I'm at. I want to kind of get an idea of how much more time there is. And I want to check my salt level. So I'm just going to take a spoon and I'm just going to put a few grains of rice on that spoon, right? And then I'm going to taste it. So when I taste this, I notice, first of all, that I need more salt.
Yep.
So that's going in immediately. And the second thing is, I noticed that it's still firm. It's going to be another 5 minutes about. Does anybody have anything that they've noticed that they want to share? It's going okay though? Your process is going all right?
Yeah.
Let
I'm
me see
surprised it
thumbs up
tastes so
or-
good.
Huh?
I'm surprised mine tastes so good.
Oh, good. I hope that you're not surprised.
I mean, this
So
is
we're
my
gonna
first
keep
time ever
cooking.
making my own broth.
Oh, nice. Excellent. That's so good. I love that. I'm so happy. Brandon, since you were the inspiration here, how's everything going?
I definitely need to work on my broth skills, but other than that, great.
Okay, good. Well, you know what, Brandon? You know how to fix that?
More
You
wine?
just add lots of butter and Parmesan at the end. Oh, wine. Yeah, that's true. But lots of butter and Parmesan at the end.
Okay. Both of those, so good.
Yeah, that can
Tell
all,
Harriet,
those
tell
two
Harriet,
things
tell
can fix
everybody.
almost anything. What?
Tell Rebecca, tell Harriet, cover their ears.
Oh, and there are several vegans online here, but that's okay. You just keep adding wonderful broth and it'll be really good. And as Rebecca suggested earlier, you can add some white miso at the end to boost the flavor. And you could also add even some ground cashews? Rebecca, when you get a chance, let me know. I think it was ground cashews.
Cashew cream, like you blend it in a high-speed blender and then.
Okay, cashew cream. Okay,
Yeah.
in a high-speed blender. So there's another two things. But again, you can make absolutely wonderful vegan risotto using olive oil and using a really great broth, and then those herbs, fresh herbs, really key to making a delicious risotto, vegan style. All right. So, wow. Now, I want to tell you something else that's kind of interesting. So the rice that I'm using is from a producer in Italy called Zaccaria, and it's called Vecchio, Riso Vecchio. So this rice is left to sit for a year before he actually packages it. And interestingly enough, there was the first rice that we imported into the States 20 years ago. Jilly, you might even remember this, was a rice like that too, that also was over a year old before. It was called Acquerello. And it was a rice that matured for a year after harvest. And I don't know the particulars, but also in Ayurveda, Indian science of health in India, they say that grains should mature for at least a year before they're actually consumed. So it's kind of interesting that in Italy, oh my gosh, where in the world did you still have an Acquerello can? That is amazing.
Who's that?
That's the kids.
Oh.
That is great. That's astounding. That rice, we imported that rice into the States, my gosh, 20 some odd years ago. And it was used in, Wolfgang Puck had a restaurant in Malibu called Granita, and they used it there and in other places. It was a great rice. All right, I still have to add a little bit more broth. So now what we're gonna do, here's where we're coming to some critical points. When we're just about at that place where we think that the rice is almost done, it's got a couple of minutes left to it, we're gonna add, if there's any sofrito that we took out, we're gonna add that back in, and we're gonna add our butternut squash, at that point also. I'm glad I see heads nodding, that's excellent. And we're gonna add our chopped sage, at that point too.
Hey, Stephen, look at mine.
Oh my gosh, another person who's got that. That's crazy. Jane has a can too.
Hey, Steve.
We have one downstairs, don't we?
I don't know.
Steve?
Yes.
I just bought a 2.5 kilo bag of Acquerello from Amazon.
Did you? Bob, that's awesome. That's too much. I love it. That'll last you for a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is that critical time now. We want, because we've got to make sure that rice is al dente, right, when we're finished. So you got to kind of extrapolate a little bit, right? So I'm going to taste mine again. That's what I'm doing. Yes. Mine's there.
Did you say add the squash and that squash sauce?
Squash sauce?
Well, we had the.
You said.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's
Okay, some
direction.
people blended up a little bit of the squash. That makes it even creamier. Yes. We're gonna add that in a minute.
Okay.
Let's add the if there's anything left from the sofrito, let's add that back in now. And I need a little bit more salt still. So I'm gonna adjust that a little bit. So I added the sofrito, and I also added the now I'm gonna add the butternut squash.
Hey, Stephen, that's a great way for vegans to get it also.
What's that?
What about the garlic, Stephen?
What sauce? Honey? Hold on one second. What sauce?
Blended to add.
Oh yeah, Rachel's saying, and she's absolutely right. A great thing for vegans is to create a sauce from that butternut squash, right? So some of the squash can be used with a sauce, blended up with a hand blender, and then it'll make a nice creamy texture and add a lot of flavor that way. So that's another thing to do with this particular type of preparation. So I'm adding more broth because I'm still cooking, and stirring everything in, moving it around. It's getting creamier and creamier. I'm going to add my chopped sage now. Still reserving my sage leaves, my fried sage leaves. So everything is in right now except for the final preparation, final additions of butter and Parmesan. Okay?
Hey, Stephen,
Yes.
When were we supposed to add the garlic?
The garlic? It was in the sofrito. It was in the sofrito.
I thought that was supposed to be, oh, I didn't add it.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's fine. You don't need it. It's fine. If you want to cook it in a separate pan really fast for a little bit, then you can add it in now. So it'll be fine. Either way, with or without. So you've got it stirred nicely. Everybody's look nice and creamy.
Yes.
Anybody not having that result?
Mine's good.
Everybody's good. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to, do 3 things. First of all, you should have, the broth shouldn't be all cooked out at this point. So the consistency you're looking for is to have, the broth. You want to see the rice on top, but you want to have enough broth in it so that there's some liquid in there. All right. So that's kind of what we're looking for. I don't know if you can kind of see it, but you can kind of, if you see how it falls off, you can see there's liquid in here. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the heat off. Off the heat. Now at this point, some people want you to allow the rice to rest. They call it riposo, il riposo, the rest. I don't do that, but you can. If you think that it could be good, you cover it and just let it. If you're going to do that, you have to really make sure that you haven't, you've taken it off early enough so that your texture is going to still end up al dente because it's going to keep cooking, right? But I definitely turn the heat off. And then I'm going to add butter. You could add butter. You could add olive oil if you want to make it vegan. And obviously, if you're going to do that, you want to use a really good olive oil. And I'm going to add butter and Parmigiano. And
wait,
yes.
Do you already add the butternut?
Yes, added all the butternut in. It's all in here. Everything's in here. Yeah. And if you have the butternut cream, essentially, the puree, you can add it now too, and it'll add a really nice color to everything.
Okay.
You stir everything through so it's nice and warm. And by the way, I put my bowls in my toaster oven, so I'm warming them up. It's really nice to have nice warm bowls to serve this in so that you can keep the whole dish nice and warm. Same with pasta. Always nice to have those bowls really warm so that you don't take, later on your bites aren't cold. Now, I was taught this by a chef. I've totally forgot why they do this, but they made the butter really tiny pieces, very thin. And there was a reason that they did that, but I forgot why, and I need to ask again. So I just do it. I know that's not really like the most amazing way to we took this out a little early, and now it's melted a little bit on the dish. Crazy, huh? But I'll get it all off. Anyway, so we want to put the butter in. So if you're going to use butter, or if you're going to use olive oil, if you're making it vegan style, you put the olive oil in. And now we're going to learn the next Italian word for this process. And it's called mantecare or mantecato, which is mixing in the butter and cheese. Evidently, this comes from a Spanish word that means butter, and which is kind of interesting. But there's no real English translation for it. But it's this particular process of mixing the cheese and the butter. And you'll notice that I'm really big on using my hands. I think that it's great to use your hands. So now I'm putting the Parmesan in. And I'm not putting all the Parmesan in. I'm reserving some Parmesan because we want to put some on top. And now we want to nicely, we don't want to beat this. We just want to mix it nicely. Just this whole process is just so sweet. That's the best word for it. And so we just want to mix it in really nicely. You should notice that it's getting really creamy. And you want to, if you need to, add a little bit more broth. Make sure you don't have anything sticking on the bottom like I'm doing right now because I had a little bit of stuff sticking. And we want to add a little bit more broth because we want to serve it. This is kind of interesting, I think. Sometimes we've gone to restaurants where we've ordered risotto and it's dry. And I don't believe that that's really the way that risotto needs to be served. But I've noticed that it can happen in Italy, even in places where, since rice is grown in the north, that's really where you used to find restaurants that served risotto more. Now things have changed where, you see tomatoes in the north and you see risotto in the south. But I think that unless you really come from that area, you may have a different idea of what it should be like. So the word for this is called, what you want it to look like is al-onda. Al-onda, onda is wave. So essentially it's more of a loose consistency. So I'm gonna add a little bit more broth because I love my risotto that way. I'm not talking about soup, but more of a loose consistency. So al-onda. You can see it. When you plate it, you'll see a little bit of broth floating in there. And you can always add more if you like. So now at this point, we want to taste one more time, right? Because we're getting ready to serve. That sage that sage is amazing. Oh my gosh. How's everybody's? Was it good?
Yeah. I somehow missed the frying of the sage leaves. I guess I missed that part.
Well, that's something that's kind of an extra. It's just if you had some extra sage available,
okay,
and you fried it in butter or clarified butter or olive oil, then you just can use it to help decorate. And it also gives a different textural element because it's going to be crisp.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know.
Really good. So, okay. So now what we want to do.
But you have to sprinkle the sage with salt or it won't get crispy.
With
yes,
salt?
you sprinkle it with salt, exactly, when it's cooking.
Okay,
exactly.
Good to know. Thank you.
All right. So now we're gonna serve it. So I've had my plates in the oven, so they are rather warm. And to serve it, I'm going to use my Grey Coon spoon because where did it go? I was going to use my Grey Coon spoon. Oh, here it is. Because you can get a nice portion. And I'm just going to pile it in the bowl.
Just come up when you're ready.
Yeah.
And wait, should we get the olive oil? And depending upon how much you want to put in there. And then I'm going to sprinkle a little Parmigiano on top of that. I'm going to give a couple of turns of the pepper grinder, maybe 3. And that smells so good. And then I'm going to take, since I'm not that artistic, but I'm going to take my sage leaf and just put it right like that. So there you have it.
Very good.
Steve, my husband said it's very good.
All right. Who said that?
Get your face in there.
Who just said that? Because I didn't see them.
Bravo.
Another great word. Jilly, perfect. Bravo. Right. Bravo.
Yeah.
That's another thing you can say. Who just said that their husband said it was really good?
That was me. It was my husband, Wayne.
Oh, all right, Jody, fantastic. And so you can do whatever you want in terms of decorating or whatever. And I always like, it's like, there are just some things you can't get enough of. So olive oil is one. So I always just like to mix everything with a little olive. And then it looks even better. It looks so cool.
Yeah.
So pretty, right? And I'm going to give this to Rachel because she's hungry.
Christy, show us again.
Sure.
Oh, here, let me. I just gave it to my husband, but he'll give it back.
Yeah, everybody can show their stuff. Come on, let's see it. Let's see what it looks like. Brandon, what?
Ooh.
Man,
Still getting to the serving part of this.
All right. Julie, where's yours? You're working on it. Okay. That's great.
We're good.
Okay.
Good.
I'm going to give this to Rachel.
I turned on
All right. And let's see.
I'm gonna use sage leaf because I'm just gonna put the right one in there.
Now, if you like to eat, here's a great little phrase. In Italy, if you like to eat, you would be known as a buona forchetta, a good fork. So buona forchetta. Nice, Jilly.
buona forchetta.
Very nice. A buona forchetta.
Buona forchetta.
Right. Buona forchetta. A good fork. So
I love
anybody,
that.
does anybody have some questions?
Yep, I got one for you.
Yes.
The pureed butternut squash, we throw that in too, or
Say that again.
the pureed butternut squash?
Oh yeah, that was mixed in when you put in the, just before you put in the, like when you put in the vegetables.
Oh, well, it's put in now.
Yeah, put it in now and mix it in, and then take it off the heat and add finishing your butter and your Parmesan. So that's a really important point I want to make. If you can, try to always use the best ingredients possible. So when you talk about Parmigiano, it should be Parmigiano Reggiano because that's the true Parmigiano, right? Wisconsin Parmesan is fine, but it's not going to have the depth of flavor that Parmigiano Reggiano has. So try to do that. Now, of course, there are other cheeses depending upon, what you're making. If you're making a seafood risotto, you're probably not going to put Parmigiano Reggiano in it. And when we had that mountain cheese in Piemonte, it was different too, but that's because of, Rachel's groaning because she remembers that it was so good.
Rachel, wait till later.
So I would just say, again, whatever you can do to find the best ingredients that you can afford, please, do that because there's no substitute for fine ingredients. You need it. You need the good stuff. So if you have fresh vegetables, that's fantastic. And if you have, local farmers that you can support, fantastic. And anything you can do in that regard. And I think I'm going to get some too. And we can all.
What were you going to say about leftovers to do something?
So leftovers are awesome. So what you can make, or you make risotto. Well, I do two different things. One is you make risotto cakes. So risotto cakes. So you put it in the fridge. Put whatever you have left over in the fridge, and then you take it out of the fridge when you're ready to make it, and you make patties. Now, some people will use an egg to bind the rice together, but I find that if you just, make your patty nice and compact, you don't need an egg to do that. And then you have to wait long enough till the underside of a nonstick pan is easier, but you have to wait long enough till as it cooks, it will bind together more, so you don't want to turn it too quickly. And so you want to caramelize the bottom, turn it, caramelize the bottom, and then take it out, sprinkle, depends on what kind of risotto you made, of course, but let's just say if you made butternut squash, then I would put, I'd crumble some sage leaves, that I had fried on top of that with some Parmigiano and some pepper. If you made, some other vegetable risotto, then I would, use fresh basil on top of the risotto cake with some Parmesan and pepper. So that's one great thing. And then the other thing is you can just create, if you want to make the easiest thing possible, just take your leftover broth and your leftover risotto and make yourself a nice soupy meal, for the next meal. So you have like a soupy risotto. that's the simplest way to go about doing it.
Can I make another vegan risotto comment?
Yes, please.
I often, when I make risotto, because even if you do all of the things, vegan risotto just leaves something to be desired still. I will skip eating it just made, and I'll make it and then turn it immediately into risotto cakes. And
Nice.
once in risotto cakes, you can't really tell. It's super good.
Nice. Great idea.
I
Great
just had
idea.
that thought. I just had that thought, Stephen, that vegan risotto sounds very anticlimactic. I mean, risotto without Parmesan cheese and butter doesn't sound like risotto. So I like Rebecca's suggestion about making risotto cakes.
Yeah.
Because
And
that would be a really good meal with a salad or something.
yes, it would be with a salad. It'd be great. It would be great.
Yeah.
Vegan risotto here.
Yeah, you've had vegan risotto here, Harriet, actually.
Oh,
Was it
you sure I didn't
anticlimactic?
cheat?
You didn't tell me.
I must have cheated and put Parmesan cheese on top.
You put Parmesan on top? By the way, I like to eat my risotto with a spoon, but use a fork, use a spoon, whatever you like. And it's funny when Rebecca, just tell me, I think when you watch Italians eat risotto, they usually move it out. They use a bowl or a plate, and they usually move it out to the sides. And then they eat it from the outside in.
Let it cool.
Hey, Stephen, there's the final product for you.
Nice. Very nice, Brandon. Have you tasted it yet?
Yep. And so is Mom. So it's been a good one too.
What'd your mom think?
She likes it.
All right.
Next, Dad, I made a giant batch so I could feed Elisa, Mom, and Dad. So
Did Elisa try it yet?
Elisa hasn't tried it, no.
We'll see.
Can't eat anything, so that's fine.
See what she thinks.
So Stephen, I added, instead of adding olive oil to mine at the end, when I did my Parmesan with sage leaves, I added the browned butter.
Well, Christy, I did that too.
It was
But I
so
also
good.
added olive oil.
You did? I didn't need the olive oil.
Very oily.
It's really,
Very oily.
really good. Really good. How's it? Oh, okay.
Terrell approves.
Okay, I can see the, let's see, everybody's eating. I love that. I love to see everybody eating. Soren, you're not eating. You didn't make it with us, huh?
No, but I'll make it some other time.
Oh, good. Well, I feel
Yeah,
bad. I should have told you. I should have told you to come over and I can leave some on the porch for you.
I know. Yeah.
I'm so glad to see you, though.
Yeah,
Nice
so
to see
nice to listen.
Well,
So-
cheers to Steve Boss for being such an incredible guide and making our really difficult time so enjoyable during the pandemic, like restaurant quality, of course. So you are such a gem, and we thank you so much for giving us such a great evening. You're such a sweetheart. So
You are a sweetheart. Thank you. You are a sweetheart.
So thank
Yes.
you so much.
So yes, that's good. So that's nice.
I second
There's another
that.
one, right?
Stephen, we second that. This is Jamie.
Well, I'm gonna take this over here and sit down
You need to sit down.
so I can eat.
Hey, Steve,
Hmm.
thank you so much. It was really, really fun, and this is just excellent.
Who's that?
Jody.
Who?
Jody.
Jody.
Yes.
Thank you, Jody.
It was,
It was
really
so
good.
nice to meet you.
You too, finally, Rachel.
How did yours turn out?
I'm on my second bowl.
All right. Okay. Excellent.
All right,
Excellent.
we're logging off to eat with a thank you, Stephen. This is awesome.
Okay, buddy.
So you like this?
Now you guys have something that you can make so many different varieties.
Just wait till I make the Mexican risotto. It'll be great.
That's right. That's right. Right. I mean, it probably came from paella, actually. I don't want to say that for a fact because I don't want to get Italians mad at me, but I have a feeling it might have come from paella. So we'll see.
Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, bye. See you, Brandon.
Good night.
Thank you, bye.
Bye, Brandon.
Bye.
Anybody have any questions?
No, but I thought this was really fun and a great way to learn, to be able to do it alongside with you.
Cool. You know, we'll try to do something else, you know, other things at other times. Hopefully I can find some real chefs to show us how to cook stuff.
You're a real chef.
No. Mm-mm. I know my place.
Of risotto that you and Rachel do, or just some other, you know, just beside the butternut squash?
Very easy.
We usually will make, in the summer, for example, the most amazing risotto is like a sweet corn risotto.
Oh God, yeah.
Or asparagus. Yeah, so in the summer, sweet corn risotto is outrageous. And you make a sweet corn broth.
Oh God.
Where you take like, say, 8 to 12 cobs that you've cut the corn off of.
Okay.
And you put them in the water, and you put a whole bunch of basil in the water.
Oh my God.
And salt and pepper and let's see, maybe a little some tomatoes. Yeah, some tomatoes.
My favorite.
And you make a broth like that, and then you, and then you add the kernels, of course, when you're cooking the risotto at the end, the sweet corn.
Right.
It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And the thing that makes it really, the thing that makes it really special is that, no, just leave it.
Okay.
Is that if you put a little like hot kind of pepper in it, it makes it so delightful. Like even jalapeno or something like that.
Jalapeno is perfect for that.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible.
Really good. Then in the spring, asparagus.
Asparagus. Yep.
Asparagus with shallot.
Yep.
And green garlic.
Would you pour like a little lemon juice on the top of it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes I make like an asparagus soup base, and then mix that in to a sauce, so it gets really pretty and green. And then, like I said to you, the first one I ever had, the fresh pea,
sweet pea,
access to that. Yeah, if you have access to that's crazy.
Well, we make zucchini all the time.
We're kind of big on zucchini around here, so we use zucchini in risotto a lot. And then I'll put chard in it, you know, with the zucchini and I mean, really, when you add, if you have a good broth and you add Parmesan and butter or olive oil, you
can't go wrong.
That's right. It's really difficult.
Steven, do you always cook your vegetables beforehand, like we did the?
No, it depends. Again, I told you guys at the beginning, you don't want to rush the process, but sometimes there are some shortcuts you can take. So the other day, when I was making with chard, for example, I roasted the zucchini in the oven, and I took all the chard leaves and put them into the broth. So they were actually cooking the whole time. So it just depends, you just try to modify things to make it work for you. We have a flame broiler, so it's nice. We get that nice extra little bit of flavor from that flame broiler, which is nice. When we do like asparagus risotto, a lot of times we'll broil the asparagus, at least part of it that goes in there. Because you just actually, the whole thing is just, it's like any type of cooking. One of the most important principles is to layer flavors. So that's what you really want to make sure that you're doing. And if you get that book by Samin Nasrat, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, she's all about layering flavors. And I just interviewed, and I'll send you this interview sometime in the next week, Danielle Alvarez, who is a Cuban American, but she's cooking in Sydney, Australia, at one of the top restaurants there. And she cooked with Samin, I believe, at Chez Panisse. And so she talks a lot about layering flavors too. I mean, because that's the whole thing. that's what you're doing with the sofrito. You're starting, that's your base, where you're beginning the process of layering the flavors. And then the wine is another layer of flavor. The broth is another layer of flavor. That salt, when you're adjusting it, is another layer of flavor. You know, so it's obviously the Parmesan and the other things that you're adding at the end are all layers of flavors too.
Herbs.
And the herbs, yeah, the herbs.
Herbs and alliums and things
Yeah.
like that.
Herbs, alliums, like Rachel said, you know, you can't get any better than that. It really is. It's just such a, you know, cooking, people think that cooking, a lot of people have a mistaken idea that cooking is difficult. It isn't difficult at all. It's actually very simple, but you just have to pay a little bit of attention, that's all. And once you start to pay a little bit of attention, then you can start to move to playing. And that makes it even more fun. So that's when you open the refrigerator and just go, oh, okay, I'll just do this and this and this. And you can't do anything wrong. I mean, that's really the bottom line. You can't, because if it doesn't turn out right, just make something else. You know, it's like, and it's all a learning process. But in all likelihood, it's going to turn out really well.
Steven, have you made a dessert one?
A dessert risotto?
Yeah.
That would be like
Interesting.
a rice. I mean, like
rice
like rice pudding, right? Like rice pudding, I think. The answer would be no, I have not, but I do love rice pudding.
Yeah, good.
Steve, I saw you posted a pasta with the ditalini, and I'm curious what's looks like a really interesting sauce. What was in it?
I don't remember.
I think there was chard in it.
Yeah, I think there was chard and.
Well, and you had olives and.
Olives.
We always have olives.
Yeah, we love to put olives in pasta. I mean, a lot of Italians would cringe at what we do because they're like, the classic statement would be, why are you putting so many different things in it? You know, because, you know, they're going to keep it really simple, like 2 or 3 ingredients, you know, that kind of thing. And we don't complicate it, but we do like little different flavors. So I can't remember exactly, but I'm glad you brought that up because I want to say another thing that is just so useful, especially in the wintertime, is to be able to add tons of flavor by roasting tomatoes. So you can take, you may not even believe this. I don't know how many of you have ever tried it, but you may not believe it, but it's true. You can take the world's worst winter hothouse tomato and turn it into tomato candy. And it's all in just taking the time to roast it. Slow roast it for hours at a low temperature with herbs and olive oil and garlic, and it just, you'll be like, oh man, what have I been missing? So it's great. You know, everybody at the end of tomato season, people who love tomatoes, oh, I don't have any tomatoes, you know. But you can, it's not the same, of course, but it's so fantastic and so easy to do. So I will encourage you to look for a good recipe for roasting tomatoes, and you can do them fast, but again, if you take the time and you do it slow, you're going to concentrate the flavors more, and that's when it's going to be like so incredible. I mean, one of the things that you have to be careful about is that you can actually take the pan out after roasting them and just stand there and start to eat all of them, and then you don't have any left. So that's not good. And by the way, I always take the skin off. I let it cool for a little bit, and then you just take the skin off. So you just have meat. That's all you have is tomato meat, essentially. And so I really like tomato candy. They're so sweet and delicious. So
you've even done it with canned tomatoes, with the whole.
Yes, I actually have done it with canned tomatoes, and it works. And speaking of that, we talked about that on the show, the last show, a couple weeks ago. I used my first time I used my Bianco di Napoli tomatoes, and I really liked them. They were good. But I still say the ones that I talked about, the La Catedral from Spain, jarred ones that you can get at the Spanish table, are by far and away the best preserved tomatoes that you can find. They're quite extraordinary.
What's that brand?
La Catedral.
Mm-hmm.
You know that brand.
Okay, yeah. So I like to make I doubt that Rachel will accept, but Rachel is an incredible baker, and among just also an incredible chef cook for savory, but just also an incredible baker. And I wonder if sometime, Rachel, you would do a dessert for us.
I'll think about it. You know me, I'm pretty shy. So
Yeah.
I would like that, but
you know, maybe if Stephen and I did it together.
yeah, I know
something
exactly
like
what
that.
you know what I would want to do.
What?
Your tiramisu.
Oh Lord.
It's so amazing. It doesn't have any eggs in it. It's extraordinary. I mean, totally extraordinary. I'm going to ask for that for my birthday, by the way. I'm just letting you know.
Fair warning.
It's really, because tiramisu, as many of you may know, uses raw eggs. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but Rachel doesn't like eggs. So she's made this tiramisu without any eggs at all. And it's, as I said, extraordinary. And the funny story about that is that I was in Nuremberg a number of years ago for a show, and a friend of mine from Italy was there with me, and he said, oh, you know, one of our friends has a restaurant here from Verona. And I was so thrilled to hear that, because the two other times I'd been there, I had been to the same German restaurant and couldn't find anything to eat because I was vegetarian at the time. And there was just nothing there to eat. And I was so afraid this was going to be the third year in a row that I was going to end up at the same restaurant again. And so he's like, oh no, we have a friend who's got an Italian restaurant. He's from Verona. And so we went there. It was so good. And I had eaten tons. And he said, now you have to have dessert, the owner. And I said, oh, there's no way I can have dessert. And he said, oh no, you have to have my wife's tiramisu. She makes it without eggs. And I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to try that, of course, because I never heard anybody who made it without eggs other than Rachel. And anyway, his wife's tiramisu was really, really good. It was delicious. Maybe Rachel and I can do that together sometime. We'll talk about it. Good suggestion. Anybody else have any questions?
No, just, again, thank you so much.
Oh, my great pleasure. The next show is December, what's today? The 2nd? Yeah. So the 16th, December 16th. And we're hoping that Chef Shimi Aaron is going to be on with us. He's still recovering from COVID, but he has started to do his classes again. So I'm hoping to catch up with him and, see if he can definitely commit to that. But otherwise, we'll have fun whatever we do. So I look forward to, letting you all know about it. And thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any suggestions of anything that you'd like Rachel making dessert or anything else, just drop me a note. You can always just reply to one of the emails that you got. And if you know anybody else who would like to be, learn about, be part of this mailing list, just send me their names and I will add them to it. And I saw some new people tonight, and I'm so glad to see you. And I don't know how you got here, but I'm glad. So really, really nice to see you. And please, there's going to be a lot of things happening next year related to the Foodverse is what I call it. And so I'll be really excited to share those with you. And I've done some really cool, what I think are really cool interviews recently. And I want everybody to have the opportunity to see those. And so I'm going to start to send out the videos before they're ever edited or put on the radio or anything like that, because sometimes it takes months to do that. So that's one of the things that I want to do for people who are coming to these events, is to let them have access to those things. So I'm going to send out the Danielle Rodriguez one next week. She's a delight, and it'll be really interesting I think, for you to listen to her talk, because she is just all heart, and that was wonderful to talk with her. It's probably the most important aspect of cooking is cooking with your heart. So,
who is that?
Danielle Rodriguez is a chef in Sydney that I talked with last week. And her book is Always Add Lemon. It's a brand new book. And so that's the name of the book. I think I have it. Oh, hold on. Always Add Lemon, Danielle Alvarez.
Cool.
It's a really
Oh,
wonderful book, and
Alvarez.
it has some really interesting takes on things. This is one of my favorite: tomato, onion, and cheddar tart. That's great.
Yum.
But she also has a vegetarian preparation of a vegetarian celeriac, celery root. If you don't know celery root, you need to get in touch with your inner celery root, because celery root is amazing. And she makes a celery root schnitzel. so she's a delight. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Anybody else have anything else?
I actually just wanted to add, I really like when you were giving us some names in Italian, and I know you have oftentimes corrected me on pronunciation. So, you know, for me, it's also fun learning those things, how to say something, you know, even if it's only a few words, but knowing how to say it correctly. And yeah, so.
Thank you. I always, you know, go back to my daughter to make sure that I'm pronouncing stuff somewhat correctly, we'll say. But like I said, it's really fun to. How many people have been to Italy? Anybody? There we go. Jilly's been there. Anybody else? Kirsty's been there. Remember, Christy? I have that picture of all of us, of you guys in Venice on my desk.
Oh, yeah.
You have the Rick Steves tour guide book in your hand. You know? It's cute. That was a long time ago. 23 years ago, I think.
97.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, so Italians are very forgiving about their language. So if you try to speak, they're very, very kind and thrilled that because there aren't too many countries where they speak Italian in the world, right? So Italy's the main one. Anybody else have anything? Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you have any risotto questions, just email me. And I hope to see all of you on the 16th of December. And again, if you have any ideas of things that you'd like to talk about or have prepared, like somebody wanted to know what they could do with chickpeas other than make hummus. So that's, if Shimi does come on the 16th, we're going to be talking to him about that. So
another question.
Yes.
Is the 16th the last show, or are you going to have a show after the 16th?
No, what is it, third Wednesday? I can't remember what it is now. Kathy and I are doing the show on Zoom I think it's the third Wednesday. Yeah, every third Wednesday. And then these are like going to be bonus things, you know, like tonight, because Brandon asked, could you do that? And I said, sure. And I plan on adding more of those next year so that, you know, we can just enjoy food together, because it's really fun. So
yeah, we should try to get the Niago on the show. I don't know, Patu and Van and Niago, they opened up a new cafe called Minori's Organics. And
so Soren?
Yeah, I email you. Yeah,
you can, but believe me, I've been trying to get them on the show for about a year or more now. And when they're ready, I guess they'll do it.
Oh man, they would be just so good.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny, you're the second person in 2 weeks that said that to me. But I mean, I've reached out to them, and they're so busy, and everybody's, believe me, I know, I understand.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's great that they are busy.
Definitely.
Especially
now. Get them
now.
on sometime. Maybe when things slow down, we'll see. Hopefully.
Well, when you see them next time, just mention it to them. So
we'll do.
We'll do that. And that's good for vegans because it's all vegan Indian food.
Mhm.
I don't know how you do that without
Soren,
ghee.
what did you say the name of the cafe was?
It's called Manoli's Organics.
Manoli's Organics?
And they're based out of the Phoenix Riding Hall.
Ah, where Vaju was.
I think so.
Nice.
In Fairfield?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna let everybody go because otherwise I'll just keep eating. So thank you so much again. It was such a great joy to see all of you, and can't wait to see you again.
Thanks, Steve. Have a good
Bye,
evening.
everybody.
Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Red taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.